How you doing, guys? It might look like I'm sitting here playing with toys, which I more or less am. But what this actually is a spider we made for a planned stop-motion sequence in Alien 3, which we haven't gotten around to shooting yet. And then I was going to use it. It was written in to be used in Lumber vs. Jack, the original movie that Jack vs. Lanterns is a sequel to. And because of some poor choices on my part when building this guy, I mean, actually, some of his legs are getting a little loose on me now. I used too thick of a wire gauge for his legs. And so when you try to do small incremental moves, you have to really put some force on it. And because then I used all this heavy molding latex to put him back together, to hold his stuff together, that latex wants to pull the wireframe back. So I think he's pretty cool looking, but you can see some of these legs are actually pretty wonky and he's not standing up straight anymore. But so I used picture wireframe, I believe 14 gauge, which is probably a little thick. But you can do some, see, and the other thing is like you can move him outwards against his own legs here. I can see some of his latex is ripping because he's old. And do those little incremental moves and they'll hold. He might be a little bit better old now. But we never got around to using him in Lumber vs. Jack. I was recently speaking to a director you've heard me mention many times on this little web show before, Thomas Berdinsky, and he said he had originally planned to have a giant spider in the Giant Rubber Monster movie 2, but the method they were using hadn't worked out, and that reminded me of my little spider here that didn't work out, and I thought, maybe we can give this sucker another try and see how he'll work for Thomas's movie. So, welcome back to another experiment with me. We're going to shoot him in front of blue screen, which will give us some advantages, because if we try to make him run, we don't actually have to move him across the table. We just have his legs move and run him in place, and this leg here really is wonky. And have him run in place, and then he can, we can have the background move in a direction behind him, so that as his legs moving forwards, the background moves backwards, it'll look like he's moving along. But I'm going to try, you've all seen stop motion videos before, and so you basically know what it entails. But someone recently asked me how you do it on video, because we all know, like from the old film cameras, you would advance the film a frame. And video cameras are notorious for not really being able to advance the video one frame. And the workaround with that, of course, is to use a still camera. There are plenty of videos on YouTube showing you how to do stop motion with still cameras, with your phone camera, whatever camera you have on hand. I am going to go into a few basics with this, some of the things you really need to pay attention to so that you don't hit the pitfalls a lot of people will. And all we're going to do with the trying to shoot about 16 to 22 frames, 24 frames, you want at least 24 frames per second. I generally get around 15, like half of what a 30 frame per second normal video would play at, and then double them up. And it makes for a kind of staccato movement, a little less smooth than you'd like, but with robots and bugs, that staticky movement works, at least in my eye. I like it. So what we're going to do today is just work on moving his head and his mandibles. And then the leg movement, I might try and take some shots this way of, but we're going to try another method for those of you who have Adobe Photoshop with the puppet function. It should, with the blue screen, work very well, where we should be able to grab just the legs and puppet animate them that way. This is a guess. It's not something I've done a great deal of yet, but it's something I've wanted to try, so you guys are going to be along for the ride. Real quick, before I start shooting with the still camera, let me just get one more thing out of the way, and that's how we built this sucker. Especially with Easter being near, this is something you all can take advantage of. His head is a foam egg. We bought some jewels at the dollar store, I believe, or a craft store for a couple of bucks. there is a piece of wire that goes, what I liked about the styrofoam, this is a styrofoam ball, styrofoam egg. What I liked about the styrofoam is you can stick the wire real thick into it, deep in there, and then we hot glued it in, and then we laid this thick liquid latex on there, which is bonding it all together and made for this gross, sticky, skin-like substance he has. You may have seen in Lumber vs. Jack, if you watched it, there is a puppet head that matches this pretty closely, that we use for the close-ups, and we wound up just using the close-ups in that movie. But now we're going to see if these mandibles work the way we want it. So it'll be to move his head, very small increments. The interesting thing about a wireframe armature as opposed to a ball and socket armature is you have a tendency to have to move things a little bit further than you want them to go, because metal always wants to bend back to its original position. So it's tricky to get those incremental movements and have things land where you want. You'll get a feel for your puppet as you use it. So let me set up the still camera, and we'll take some shots of this sucker's head moving. As with any blue screening, you want to let your background separate from your model. This is going to be throwing some shadow down here, which is why another reason I want to use the other method for moving the legs. But for the head, we're going to be in a very close-up shot of the head to get it moving and get the mandibles moving. So in all likelihood, we won't have too much of a problem with this being lit with some shadow on it, because it'll just be a close-up of the head with the blue way back here and the body of it as the background. All right, so we'll be back in just a minute, guys. Okay, so here's our basic setup. We have our still camera here. We have our puppet there. So you can see there's going to be a little bit of walking back and forth. If you have a camera that uses a remote, perfect. Also, a timer can be used if you can figure out how long it's going to take you to move back and forth to your puppet and do your setups, or even just do your setup and step out. So I can be, over here, not in the light, do the setup, move out, let it take its shot. That's zoomed in further than that, so I'll be cropped out when I'm out of the way. The basic thing is you want to make sure that when you hit your shutter button to grab your frames, you don't move the camera. So you want a nice solid tripod and as little contact with the camera as possible. You also, whenever you can, want to use manual focus, manual zoom, manual lighting settings, just because you want all these things to be fixed. You don't want them to change as things go on. If you're forced to do this kind of thing outside, you get a lot of lighting changes, so doing it in the studio is very helpful. If you can see the image on here, what's happening, what I was forced to do because my focus closer up and zoomed in more on this little camera is not working to the convenience that I had hoped. I was hoping the little camera would be easier than setting up the big one. I can't get cropped in as much as I'd like to focus on there. So one of the tricks I was going to tell you is what you'd like to do, especially if you have a shot that is exactly what you want, is you want to set this to 1920 by 1080 as your resolution. Some cameras will allow you to do that. I'm leaving this image as big as possible so that I can crop out the useful part I want and scale that. Well, actually, whoever uses the footage will be able to do it. And scale that down to what I need. With the blue screen as the background, it doesn't really matter as much because I won't be able to make the background what we want it to be in terms of how we've scaled this footage down. So again, all I'm going to mess with is the head and mandibles. I'm going to go ahead and record myself doing this. I'll almost definitely speed this up for you guys because it's going to be painstaking. And we're going to try and get 22 shots out of it. All right, so I'll keep rolling just so you can see it, but here we go. So, consummate professional that I am, I was concentrating so much on the puppet that I didn't realize the camera that you guys are watching me with ran out of room. The card filled up and you didn't get to see all my little movements on stop motioning the puppet. But I think there's probably enough on there for you to get the idea. And like I said, there's plenty of videos on YouTube showing you how basic stop motion works. I did screw up a couple of things, and I'll go over them now. At some point, you might see me putting my hand on the puppet. That is because you want to make sure he stays, except for the parts you're trying to move, in the same place. So if I want to move this leg, to give you the illusion that this leg is moving, unless I also want the puppet moving forwards, and like I said, with this kind of setup, we'll be making the background move on its own, I want to keep him still. I want to move this leg and have him turn, and then have him come back, because then you're going to wind up with him all over the board, and it's just not going to work for you. Which brings me to another point. Spiders, four-legged animals, tanks, cars, rolling balls, but basically things you don't have to worry about, like little people or Tyrannosaurus rexes. They are notorious for this. Things that will fall over. If you go on my channel and you look for the dinosaur that almost ate Christmas, you will see a Christmas video I did years ago with some very well-known characters and a big white abominable and a dinosaur. And I did pretty well with keeping the T-Rex on his feet, but the abominable kept falling over. So there's actually a scene in there where the abominable didn't fall over. The character who was walking him on a leash kept falling over. I forgot that. So you'll actually see a thing where there's a line where it says, "Quit tugging on your leash, you keep knocking me over." And the reason the character says that is because I was just trying to get a take where he walked across the screen. And I could not, in the 4 hours it took me over 2 nights to shoot that 4-minute stop motion video, I could not get him to walk across the screen without falling down right around the middle. So the beginning, the middle, the end, he would just keep falling over. So what I finally did was I just went with it, went with all the falls, put the falls in and him getting up as part of the action, and wrote it into the script. So what I'm saying is, for your first few times, don't use two-legged things. Do figure out, if you can, how to tie down their feet. If you're going to be showing the feet, obviously it's a little more difficult. What a lot of people will do, and again, there's videos on this for proper armature, is they'll use a wooden board, drill holes in the bottom, and have screws on the bottom of the character's feet that go in. The other way you could do it, if you had any of the old Star Wars figures, there used to be places on the action sets for them to stand, and they had holes in the bottom of their shoes, and they'd stand on those little pegs, much like Lego men, which is why Legos are a perfect place to start practicing for stop motion, because with a Lego, he will stay standing. He has incremental movement. He has very few movable joints. So you've only got to worry about moving his head, his arms, kicking the leg here and there. They're a great way to learn how many frames it takes, how long it takes, how the camera needs to be steady, and figure out all the weird things that happen when you're trying to take 27 different pictures, 24, 30, hundreds of different pictures for a minute, and get them all to look like one stream of video that was shot over the course of a minute. If you're not going to use Legos, then do try to figure out a way to tie your character's feet down. You can drill holes in the bottom of a board. You can use a cookie sheet with magnets on the bottom of the feet. That was something I was trying for a while. The magnets worked. The flexy little skeletons I was using, not so much. It wasn't that they didn't animate properly. They just didn't look much like skeletons, and it wasn't scary at all. So a metal cookie sheet with magnets on the bottom of your thing's feet. Multi-legged creatures will work fairly well. And flying saucers, those are easy. You just turn, turn, turn. I would suggest starting with all of those before starting anything two-legged that you're going to have too much trouble figuring out the tie-downs on. But you will eventually want to get to that because that stuff is fun. The other thing you can even do is, if you have a friend who will help you, either put them behind the camera and you move a little bit and have them take pictures each time, and you can stop motion animate yourself. If you look up on my channel, the crazy Fishman Dance, the way that dance came about was my wife was firing off shots of a Fishman suit that I had made in front of the white screen. We were taking pictures of it to use for publicity stuff. And when I looked back at the camera and started scrolling through the pictures, pop, 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 on the camera, as you do to see which ones came out well, he was moving because I was in a slightly different position in each shot. So what I did was I strung those together and actually made a stop motion animation of him dancing. And at one point he's crouched down, another point he's straightened out, crouched down, straightened out, and I then was able, because we were in front of a high key white screen, we were able to key him in, make it look like he's jumping up and down across the dance floor, which is pretty neat stuff. So you can look that up and see. Now, on to the next thing, and this will be a separate video because I've been babbling to you for quite a while. I am going to take some still frames of this guy with his legs in view, his head in view. We'll only probably be able to move the legs on one side with this puppetry method. So I'm going to take him from this angle, slightly different angle. So there will be some camera stop motion in there as well. But I'm not going to mess too much with his legs because, as I said, they're made better for bending outwards than forwards and back. That motion is just not working properly with these. I didn't build them right for that. And we're going to try doing the puppet method in Adobe Photoshop. And like many of my videos, you will be along for the ride on that to see how well it works out. So I will do it, and if it doesn't work, I'll explain why I think it didn't work, and if it does work, I'll tell you how I did it. Stick around for the end of this video, and watch our spider's head move around, and his mandibles open and close, and we'll see you next time when we make him run. We hope. Probably. It should work. Talk to you soon, guys. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.